Trails in the Sky First Chapter Remake is incredible. Has it ruined the original for me? Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and Trails in the Sky Remake is my game of the year. It's my personal favorite game of the entire year. Yes, I know this is also the year that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 came out, and I understand what it means for me to say Trails in the Sky is my favorite. Expedition 33 is fantastic, and you should absolutely play it if you haven't. But I don't know, the discourse around the game kind of burned me out. I'm ready for a break from Expedition 33 for a bit, and I'm a Trails sicko. I'm never in need of a break from Trails, so call it unfair if you will, but Sky, First Chapter Remake, favorite game of the year. I love it. But how has that affected my relationship with the original game? It's a full, basically one-to-one remake in almost every single way. Do I still love the original despite all the improvements in the remake? Do I consider the original basically pointless now? Let's talk about it, shall we? Oh, sorry about the mess back there. I normally try to clean up a little bit before I do a video, but my dog was sleeping under that blanket on the couch, and he was nice enough to let me come down and record a video anyway, so I didn't want to bug him. I'm just gonna leave him be, so apologies. There are definitely ways that I prefer the remake to the original. It's true. For one thing, the visuals, okay? This is an enormous upgrade. It barely feels like the same experience because you are looking at a game built with like, you know, that PlayStation 1 era 2D sprites on 3D backgrounds from kind of that 3/4 perspective. And, you know, it works great, and I am nostalgic for that style of game. You getting up? You gonna take a nap, bud? What's going on? He doesn't know what he's doing. What was I saying? Yeah, the original, the aesthetic of the original had that PlayStation 1, you know, 3D backgrounds, 2D sprites, which I'm nostalgic for, but I have, to be perfectly honest, never really felt connected to the sprite characters in the original. That's something that I've criticized about it long before we even knew there was going to be a remake. So this isn't something that I just came to after being so enamored with the remake. The sprites in the original games, they look like those little Playmobil figures to me, like not exactly, but I don't know. There's just something about them that's plasticky and feels really lo-fi in not a fun way. So I just don't care for those. So being able to see the story and the world blown up into this like beautiful anime aesthetic, this gorgeous presentation is just a dream come true. Like I love the story, I love the characters, I love the world. Getting to see it more fully realized in the remake is incredible. Also, everything just feels a lot more premium, right? Like when you go from the field into a town, it's a seamless transition. You just kind of walk into the town and put your weapon away and you're there. You're not transitioning to a loading screen or whatever. Like it's seamless. And I know the entire world isn't that way. Like there's chapter breaks and you find yourself going to new locations and there's loads. So it's not completely open world or anything like that, but it is very open zone. And I love that so much. I hope every Trails game is like that going forward. On top of all that, all of the cutscenes are, you know, fully animated and feel a lot more lively. Even just scenes where characters are standing around or sitting around talking to each other, like they're so much more vividly alive now. And I wouldn't give that up for anything. And the voice acting, okay. Visuals aside, the voice acting is incredible. They got basically the entire original cast, everybody reprising their roles with, you know, a few exceptions. But like for the most part, we've got everybody represented and they all do a phenomenal job, right? Like almost every character is voiced in some capacity. Major characters, of course, but even minor characters, right? Everybody feels like perfectly cast. Nobody feels like they don't fit their voice, or you know what I mean? Like sometimes an actor might be a perfectly good actor, but they just don't fit the look of a character or the personality of a character. I feel like everybody was just perfectly cast in this. And this is the first time that we in the English-speaking world get to hear this story voiced. Like the Japanese players got to have that a long time ago with the Vita remake of Trails in the Sky. What's it called? It's escaping me. But there was a version on the Vita in Japan only that had full voice acting, and so they've gotten to experience the story with voices before. This is our first time, and I'm very here for it. Along with the acting and the animation, like those two things together create a situation where characters are so much more believable and real, right? Like they're able to convey emotions so much better in the remake because you don't just have text on a screen and a tiny sprite to sort of help convey that emotion. You have rich animation and voice acting to deliver that same message, and it's delivered so much better because of all the tools that it has at its disposal. And that just has the effect of making the world feel so much more alive. I think the music is better in the remake, like having the option of switching between different versions of all the songs is very cool. I didn't feel a strong need to switch the music around. Like the default music that comes in the remixed, remastered versions of all the tracks, I think are just astounding, especially the battle theme. Like, if you ever played a game of this length where you didn't get tired of the battle theme, like, it almost never happens, but I love the battle music in this game. It's incredible. And that's just Falcom for you. That's just kind of what they do. The world of the game just feels so much richer and so much more real and lived in and explorable, right? Like, there's a lot to do, and it's not enormously more than you could do in the original in terms of like story beats or anything. Obviously, like, it's a one-to-one recreation of this story, but it just feels so much bigger and better. And that's all the aesthetics. Right now, the combat is a completely separate story, and it's just as good, right? Like, they have brought the most refined version of the up-to-date Trails battle system to Skyfirst Chapter. They didn't mess around with dumbing it down, toning it down so that it wouldn't feel so out of place compared to the original, right? The original, as much as I love the original's battle system, it is very straightforward, turn-based, position-based combat, right? Trails in the Skyfirst Chapter Remake gives you the full action option, like in the Trails Through Daybreak sub-series, which that introduced full action combat that you can choose to do for all the non-boss battles. You can just go around and fight them in just action combat if you want to. And it makes the grind so much more fun and varied because you can change up your style, right? You don't just have to play in turn-based. You also don't just have to play in action-based. Like, I can start out in action-based, I can stun the enemies, and then I can jump into turn-based. And it's like I have everything at my disposal all the time, and I'm like, why don't other games do this? I know Metaphor kind of does, and that's great. I think that's a great first step in that direction, but I just wish more series would give us these options, right? Some people hate turn-based, some people hate action. Like, let's marry these two things together and give us a game that more people can find ways to enjoy. That, coupled with the fact that they brought in elements from other later games in the series, not just the action combat, but like the follow-up system from the Cold Steel series, the burst attacks. Like, they brought all of these things in and added them into the formula and just created like this concoction that is the perfect battle system in my mind. I just love it so much. I never got tired of fighting. Like, in most games, by the final quarter of the game at least, I'm like, okay, I fought 1,000 battles at this point. Can we just get a move on? But like, I didn't feel that way. And I also didn't use fast forward mode. Like every other Trails game before the Daybreak series, I had fast forward mode on basically the whole time because everything just felt slow. It felt too slow for a modern game. I really just feel like they nailed the pacing in the combat for one thing. And for another thing, I just liked watching the combat play out so much that I never felt like I wanted it to go faster. Like, I was content to just watch it because I enjoyed it so much. So I don't know, that says something to me. And as somebody who is like trying to be an ambassador for the series, trying to reach out to people that are not currently fans of the Trails series and show them why I think it's great and why I think that they should give it a try. And, you know, to kind of counteract some of the negative voices, because in any fandom, right, there's going to be voices that come across as pushy or bullying or negative or whatever. That's just the nature of fandoms. It happens in Trails too, and I just want to be a voice that runs counter to that. But as that sort of person who's trying to do that on the internet, I think that this game is a godsend because it's like, finally, here is the perfect place for you to enter Trails. You can come into the story at the very beginning and not have to give up any of the modern conveniences that you would have you'd expect to see, right, in a modern game. I love it. I love it so much. Okay, but having said all that, are there any things that I prefer in the original? I mentioned this in my review of the remake. I have something of an issue with parts of the remake's localization. Okay, so for reasons that are too complex to even begin to try to get into, and I don't fully understand what went on either, but for those complicated reasons and for my lack of insider understanding, I will say that the first 20%, 25%-ish of the game, the localization is pretty poor. Sometimes outright terrible. Like, there are some lines that I found myself like shaking with rage, because I was like, you can't do this to this series. And because this was at the beginning of the game, I thought, okay, this is it. Like, this is like a Faustian bargain, right? It's a monkey paw wish. Here I'm wishing for Trails in the Sky First Chapter to be remade, and they remade it, and it's beautiful. But the localization sucks. Like, that was what I was thinking as I was playing the beginning of this game. And I was so disappointed because I was like, man, I would have just been in love with this if it weren't for this localization. There's just horribly awkward, stilted lines. Not everything is that way, of course. Like, some lines don't need a lot of fancying up to sound good. Like, they're just very straightforward. And it can be easy to kind of lose yourself into the lull of going from scene to scene and not really thinking too much about it. It also helps that the voice actors are all really good, and they take some of that subpar material and make it palatable in ways that just text on the screen wouldn't do for me. But even with the voice actors, there were some lines where I was just like, one is when you meet Olivier, which is a great scene, and it just kind of did not pass the test in this version of the game. And yeah, there's a couple, I don't want to go into it too much, but I still one day want to make a video kind of breaking down why I think that, you know, these scenes were bad versus later on as things improved, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah, essentially, like, the first quarter of the game, 20% of the game, the localization was rough, like PS1 era rough. Like, this guy are sick. I mean, not mistakes of that caliber, but like, this is bad. For some reason that is probably too complicated to go into right now, that changed as the game went on. As the story advanced, suddenly I started to see more personality in the writing. I started to cringe far less, right? It's an anime game. Like, even with the best writing, I'm still gonna cringe sometimes, and you might find yourself cringing sometimes. That's to be expected. It's the genre. It's fine. I don't mind a little bit of cringe in my entertainment. It's not a big deal to me. But the beginning portion of the game was so bad that it wasn't cringing from like embarrassment. It was like anger. It was like frustration and rage, right? So it did get better. But having said that, because of that, and if you compare it to the original localization in the Trails in the Sky First Chapter game, that is going to be significantly better across the board, especially for that beginning portion. I would still say, even with the improvement that the localization sees in the remake throughout the rest of the game, I would still maybe notch it below the original in terms of overall quality. Like, I'm just speaking, I know for a lot of people it doesn't matter and they prefer it to be literal translation. Like, for a lot of reasons, that's not how localization works. Like, you don't translate things literally because, you know, if I said to you, for example, if I said I'm pooped, you would know what that means, because I'm pooped is a phrase that we say in English when it means like we're tired. If you literally translated that into another language using just the words that I said, you would have a very different understanding of what I said in that other language, right? Like, so that's a goofy example that's way out there, but like, that is just an illustration of why literalism doesn't work in translation. Anyway, this is not a video about translation, not a video about localization, but I would still say the original localization, the PSP PC version, is a notch above the remake. The remake gets good. It does get good, but the original is just going to always hold a special place in my heart. It's what hooked me on the series, right? The gameplay was cool, the story was great, but the localization, the character dialogue is what really brought me in. And so it's always going to have a special place in my heart. Kind of related to that, it's not exactly localization, it's more directorial. So there are some key terms in the remake that don't match how they are used or said throughout the rest of the series, which suggests to me that whoever was in charge at that point of making those decisions just didn't do their homework, was not a series fan, did not communicate with series fans enough, didn't ask questions when they should have. It happens. I'm hoping that they learn from the experience and that we can maybe see a patch for some of these things and that they will be corrected going forward. It seems like a small thing to somebody who's not super into it, but it's like, imagine if you're a Lord of the Rings fan and somebody came in and did an adaptation of Lord of the Rings and they just said all the names wrong or so, you know what I mean? Like, you'd be annoyed by that because it's like, this is canon, like this has been established. So things like pronouncing Jin as Zin and liberal as liberal, like the political affiliation, is strange. Like calling archaisms orbal golems, for example. Like, there are choices that were made in the series and have been established as canon, and other companies who have worked on the series have agreed on that canon, and they've like, Xseed and NIS America, they've stuck to that canon. And Gung Ho with this localization, for whatever reason, did not in some of these cases. I have to assume it's just that they didn't know, and that the person who was responsible for making sure things like that were handled properly didn't care enough to learn. And that sounds a little harsh, and I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just like, if somebody gives you that sort of responsibility to kind of shepherd something that is so beloved by so many people, you would have to care pretty little to not want to do it justice, right? So that's unfortunate, but I am hopeful that those things will be corrected, and possibly even in this game, possibly a patch could be issued to fix these things. It wouldn't, fixing liberal, they do say liberal quite a lot because it's the country the game takes place in, and it's kind of a geopolitical story. So I don't know how likely it is that they'll fix it, but it's possible, and I would love it if they could. Another thing that I feel like and this is where it gets into kind of shaky territory. Like, I feel like it's probably pretty clear. I love the remake. I think the remake is better as an experience than the original game. It just takes everything that I loved about the original and just makes it better, with those couple of exceptions where I think the original, in English at least, holds up better. But there's something about the original that's just like, that feels more digestible, more like ideal for handheld almost. Like, when you play the original Trails in the Sky, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like, everything in the remake is so much more complicated. It's so much more complex, right? Because everything is fully animated and voiced, and cutscenes that would just be a bunch of talking character portraits are now fully acted out. And so there's something, I don't know, comforting about that. I'm of two minds about it. There's something cool about having it all kind of fully realized that way. But there's also a part of me that loves the amount of imagination that was required to really engage with JRPGs like this back in the old days, right? Playing on the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation, PSP, that era, before production became what it has become now, you had to use your imagination so much more to be able to get anything out of these games, out of these stories, to feel connected to these characters, right? Like, I was able to feel deep emotion about a character like Chrono, who's a voiceless protagonist in a Super Nintendo game, right? Because you are, especially as a kid, but even older, forced to use more of your imagination to experience the story. When you take an older story like that and bring it into the modern era, you get the benefit of all of the rich, acting and animation and music and colors and palette. It's just beautiful stuff, right? But you do have to kind of give up that imagination portion of it. And I'm not necessarily saying it's bad that we have to give up that imagination portion. Like, I think it's forward movement is good, and I don't regret that the Sky remake is what it is. But there's part of me, I will admit, that, the kind of classic JRPG fan kid in me that does kind of miss that imagination-dependent storytelling a little bit. Just a little bit. So the question is, has the remake of Trails in the Sky First Chapter caused me to feel differently about the original? Kind of. I think it's almost impossible for it not to. You take the original Trails in the Sky First Chapter, this experience that means so much to me and to so many people, that was the entryway for so many of us into the world of Trails, and, take that core foundation of the series and just glow it up so beautifully. It's going to affect your perception of everything. Like, the original game is going to kind of color how you feel about the remake, and the remake is going to alter how you feel about the original. In some ways, it makes me appreciate the original a little more, because seeing everything played out so richly makes me realize like how on top of it they were 20 years ago or whatever, when the first game came out. Like, this game was able to be as amazing as it is in the form of the remake without having to really make any changes, right? Like, everything is better, everything is richer, and there's more to everything going on, just like from its presentation, but they didn't change the story at all, right? They barely changed the dialogue, right? I mean, the localization changed, but you know what I mean? The original script of the game. They barely had to do anything to modernize and make this game appealing to a 2025 audience. That's incredible. And that foundation was there in the original game. So it does kind of make me appreciate what the original game was doing even more. It also makes me less inclined to want to play the original. And that's kind of a sad thing. And I know a lot of people are going to feel differently about this. Like maybe it makes them want to play the original more. Maybe they didn't like the combat or whatever in the remake. And so they are more drawn to the original than they ever have been. For me, like it did everything in my mind right. Like it crushed it as far as taking a beloved original game and remaking it into something new. It just did it right. And I don't really feel like I need to go back and play the original anymore. Does that mean I never will? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, my feelings on various things related to JRPGs and video games have changed a lot over the years. My interests have kind of risen and fallen in different places. So like, it's entirely possible I'll want to play through it again someday. But right now, I guess maybe basking in the glow of like having experienced this remake so recently, just a couple months ago, like I feel like I'm good. Like I want to play the remake again. Like I would like to play the remake again right now, but I don't feel like I need to play the original again. And that's a game, the original game is one I've played, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times at this point. Like I've played it a lot and I used to always replay it like leading up to a new game. It used to be a lot more time. Understand. There used to be a lot more time between Trails games. We're kind of spoiled right now. It used to be years between Trails games over here. So I would have time to play through the series over and over and over between new titles, but it's not really the case anymore. But still, like, I don't know. Yeah, I think it has changed how I feel about it, and for better and for worse, I guess. It's affected me both ways. And I think that's okay. I think it feels right to me right now. If you feel differently, if it's changed your feelings in a different way, or if it hasn't changed your feelings at all, let me know in the comments. Let's talk about it. I'm curious. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what I would like to see in Trails in the Sky second chapter remake, shall we? All right, first things first, and maybe this is obvious based on how much time and attention I spend on this particular topic, but I hope that we just get the localization nailed right away. That right out the gate, we are running on all cylinders and everything is as it should be. I hope that our pronunciations are back to the canon pronunciations for these things. I can even deal with the fact that if they never go back and fix the first game and there's a weird aberrations there with Zin and liberal or whatever, like that's okay. It's not ideal, but it's okay. As long as it's corrected going forward, I don't think it'll bother me all that much. So really, really hope that we get that solid localization right out the gate from the beginning. I don't know who they're going to work with. I don't even know if it's been confirmed if Gung Ho is doing it. Like I would assume that they are, but who knows, right? Like I think people were surprised that it wasn't NIS America in the first place. So who knows? No idea. But I know they're capable of good writing. Like the latter 3/4 of the game prove that to me. Like if they start with that as a baseline and improve from there, like they're going to be great. I think they're going to be great. Will it match up to my love for SC the original? Like I think the writing in that game is also just freaking fantastic. So it'll be a tough fight, but I think that they're capable of at least matching it. Semi-related, but not really related to the localization, but the presentation of dialogue. And this is the eternal Trails problem, which is that there's not enough voice acted lines. And sometimes when they choose to have voice acted lines, they do it in weird ways that make no sense to anybody except for people at Falcom, I guess. But like they'll have, a character be introduced and that character will have voiced lines and no other characters in the scene will. They'll just be text on the screen and then that character talks and it's voiced, and it's very weird, and I've never gotten used to it. There's a lot of things that you get used to when you play a series of games over and over and over. I've never gotten used to that, and I'm always like, oh, I cringe, I hate it, I don't like that they do that. I would rather, honestly, that they had no voice acting in a scene if everybody isn't voiced. Like that to me is like the benchmark for, are they learning the right lessons? And that is, every character speaks in a scene or nobody speaks in a scene. And I think that that's a simple way to handle it, right? So if you're introducing a new character and you want to have them voiced, have everybody else voiced too. I feel like that's a pretty simple solution. I know I'm throwing it out there like it's the easiest thing in the world. I know for them in the real world, it costs money and they don't have a ton of money. Like they're not a giant company, but please, it bothers so many people. That's like probably the number one thing that I hear from people that are picking up a later Trails game as their first Trails game, being like, why don't all the characters talk all the time? It's weird. I know it's weird. I don't, nobody likes it. Nobody likes that. Here's a little kind of nitpicky one. I think I mentioned this in my review of the game, but I don't like how when you go into a building, it goes to a loading screen. So stupid, so little, who cares, right? But like, In the Daybreak games, you would go into a building and it would just seamlessly, you'd go into the building and you walk around and then you'd walk back out and you're back in the town. You know, they don't do that in Sky, and I think there's probably reasons for it, like maybe the design of the houses didn't quite match up in the original game with what the interior space needed to look like. I would be okay if you designed the buildings a little differently. Like, that's not the kind of level of detail of consistency between original and remake that I'm looking for. Like, you can redesign the buildings to make them work in a 3D space. Like, I think people would understand that. But if that is the reason, I mean, that would explain it at least. But yeah, we go to loading screens for most buildings in the game, and I would just love it if we just had that seamless, you know, entering from the countryside into a town, seamless. Going from, you know, the town into a building, seamless. That would just make it feel even more connected and real. Like, that's, I hope that happens. I don't know if it will. They probably are working on the same engine that they used, a modified engine for Sky First Chapter, so maybe not, but a guy can hope. This last one might be a little controversial for people that are hardcore purists about keeping everything the same as it was, but I would personally love to see more, like, Easter eggs for the future of the series thrown in. Like, not haphazardly, not just like chuck a character in who shouldn't be there. Like, they've kind of done things like that in the past with the Crossbell games. They throw Yuna in there and Toa, like from the Cold Steel series. They weren't there in the original versions of those games. It was like the Vita remakes that had them added in kind of after the fact. So yeah, like, I would prefer, I guess, that they not do that sort of thing. But there are other ways to add little Easter eggs and little nods towards the future of the series without doing that. And I think a way to do that is to just show us things that you didn't show us before, right? Like a cutscene that takes place somewhere else that we didn't see, that ties into what's happening and is pertinent to the story, but like involves something that fans of the series maybe are only going to be the ones that pick up on this, but can pick up on how it's connected and kind of feel that, ooh, that kind of like shiver up your spine. You're like, oh, I know what's happening there. And it's not going to matter to brand new fans. They're going to see it as just a mystery that will be solved later, because for them it will be. But for those of us who have played the rest of the series, like, it would be cool to see more of that sort of thing. I'd love to see more with like Ouroboros, honestly, like give us a little post-credit scene with them. Something more with Kevin. Like Kevin and the church are like the things that I'm most interested in. Ouroboros, Kevin, the church, like those are subjects within the Trails universe that I really want them to explore more. I hope that they get their own dedicated game in the near future as like part of the conclusion of the series. But in the meantime, I think it'd be really cool to see more from the future of the series kind of worked into SC. And please, if you could also, like you did with the first one, give us a little tease of the third at the end, just so that we can be confident that it's coming. Please, 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 please. Thank you. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for watching, for subscribing. If you have, I really appreciate everyone who's subscribed to this channel. It just means so much to me. Thank you to the channel members for supporting me in the channel this way. You guys rock. Also, please, check out my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit. If you like podcasts and JRPGs, we talk about JRPGs every single week. So check us out. Link is in the description. And with that, until next time.